Senator Tom Cotton is with me, Republican from Arkansas, at @SendTomCotton on Twitter. Senator, it's great to have you back on the broadcast, and we have a ton to get to today. I want to start with a little bit of a discussion of some very strange behavior I've been noticing from our Pentagon, where they have now taken to condemning cable news hosts who disagree with them on things, Tucker Carlson namely, but it will go beyond that because Tucker was critical of new flight suits are being promoted for pregnant women. Now, I don't believe pregnant women are currently fighting our wars, Senator, but what's more disturbing is that the military or the Pentagon is making statements condemning citizens who voice opinions they don't like, and also noting in one case that apparently you're not entitled to have an opinion about the armed forces if you did not serve. Now, you served, and you served in Afghanistan and Iraq, if I remember correctly, and in combat. So you've got a lot of experience here. Do you accept that we cannot hold an opinion about our military unless we served?
Well, good morning, Alex. Good to be on with you. No, I do not accept that. Of course, every American citizen has a right to express their opinion on the military or any other question about our nation's future. Look, irrespective of who expresses the opinion or on what cable network it expressed or the content of the opinion, it's not proper for senior uniformed military officers to be piling on in what appeared to be a coordinated social media campaign. Now, look, if civilian leaders at the Pentagon want to express that opinion, or if it's put to them in an interview or a press conference, it's one thing to respond to what a TV host says, but the kind of social media campaign in which senior officers seem to be taking the initiative to go out of their way to comment on it, I don't think is helpful, and I hope that Secretary Austin has directed his senior commanders to stop that and not do it again in the future. Again, it wouldn't have been appropriate. It wouldn't have been appropriate in the Trump era to direct it towards MSNBC or CNN hosts. It's not appropriate now to direct it towards Fox News hosts.
Well, here's one thing that is interesting to me, and from conversations I had with people who were senior White House officials during the Trump era, is that this has been a long process, the wokeification of the Pentagon. And I don't know what direct impact it has or exactly how widespread it is, but this is not a new thing where they do feel like that there is part of the responsibility is the prioritization of LGBTQI+, whatever that means, and using the military to promote social justice activism. And this is the sort of thing where you would hope that this environment would be free from this, but it's clearly not, and that disturbs me. Do you know the extent to which this is going on, and if so, are you concerned about it?
So I do have some concerns, Alex. Look, the military is the most important, the most serious institution perhaps we have in our entire society. It's one thing if some giant multinational corporation wants to waste its time and money indoctrinating its employees and pursuing, social justice campaigns through its HR department. I mean, that's in the end going to hurt them and their shareholders in the long run. But the military serves us all to protect us and keep us free and safe. And the foremost focus of our military should always be on training and preparing to fight our nation's wars so we don't have to fight them in the first place.
Yeah, and it seems like that would be almost the entire priority, but apparently now it's also the equity and inclusion, which is that's what I know when I think of the glory of America's military is equity and inclusion. That comes to mind. Maybe second after the back-to-back World War victories. I think the next one is its commitment to the LGBTQ plus crowd. Senator Cotton, and then hopefully for people can tell I'm being tongue-in-cheek there. Senator, let's turn our focus to the border. Unaccompanied minors are surging at the border. It's clear, I don't know if the data's in yet, but it's clear that this is a tactic from the cartels to send more minors to overwhelm the system and to create political chaos in the United States. It seems like the Democrats have an entirely different take on what is best to do about it than Republicans. Give me your thoughts on this.
Well, it is clear that the cartels and the smugglers have now put out the word throughout Central America. The border's open. Joe Biden's president. Give us your life savings and we'll get you into America. They're heartbreaking stories of families from Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador being told that, getting to the border, and not being able to get in because we still are turning away most adults without children because of the public health emergency under the federal law. However, Joe Biden explicitly exempted minors from that public health declaration. Guess what? More minors are showing up. And the simple principle is if you let them in, more will come. And that's what we've seen every month since the election, with the anticipation that Joe Biden would open the borders and give illegal aliens work permits and ultimately give them amnesty. More have been coming. And what the Democrats and the media are talking about is a derivative sideshow. They want to talk about how fast these migrants are being processed and whether they have beds or cots and how many showers that are offered and hot meals and bilingual teachers, where they're going in the Dallas Convention Center or a NASA base or a military base. It's a derivative sideshow of letting them in the first place. If you do not let them in, if you turn them around and tell them to go back to Mexico or to Guatemala, which was a safe third country under the Trump administration, you don't have to worry about how fast you process them.
So what do you make of Joe Biden telling migrants not to come here? But it looks like Alejandro Mayorkas, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, seems to be getting ready a system to process more of them. It's not just turn more of them away, but to process more of them into the country. And now they're supposed to come back and go to a court hearing, but that's not going to happen for the most part. How do we connect these dots?
So Joe Biden just saying once in an interview on American television, don't come, is not going to get the job done. We saw this in 2014, sending a few cabinet secretaries to Central America or running an ad in Spanish language radio in Central America, putting up a billboard is not going to stop it. What's going to stop it is effective enforcement of our border. And you're right, Alex, that Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, is not focused on enforcing the border. He's focused almost solely on expediting the number of migrants we can get across the border and released into the country. That is the opposite of the signal we should be sending. Because I can tell you, when migrants get to our southern border, almost always the first thing they do is get on their phones and post on social media and send text messages back to their home country and tell them what the conditions are. Alex, I saw this in another setting. In 2016, early 2016, I was in Serbia at a migrant way station. Do you remember when there's massive flows of migrants in Europe in 2015, and Angela Merkel had thrown open the doors and welcomed them all in if they could make the dangerous journey alive? And you had busloads of migrants getting off at this way station in northern Serbia. The first thing they asked for, it wasn't food, it wasn't water, it wasn't a restroom, it was a charger for their smartphones so they could post on social media to the old country, whether it was Libya or Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan or points in between, about what the conditions were like and how they could get there and join as well. The same thing is happening today.
So where would you start if you had a sane way of fixing it? What do you think the steps we should be taking actually are?
3 simple steps will end the crisis at the border tomorrow, Alex. First, re-enter the safe third country agreement we had with Guatemala and other Central American countries.
Yes.
But Guatemala was the key one. Guatemala stretches from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean. Anyone from Central or South America passes through it. When they get to the border, if they haven't demonstrated they applied for asylum in Guatemala, tell them, go back to Guatemala and apply for asylum there. That was stopping, 98% of all economic migrants who would just, by the way, go home to their home country. They wouldn't go to Guatemala and seek asylum because they don't want to be in Guatemala. They want to be an American, get an American job and have an American way of life. That's the first thing. Second, re-enter the Remain in Mexico policy with Mexico. For those very few migrants who did process through Guatemala, that required them to stay at our southern border and seek their American asylum claim without being released for 18 or 24 months into the country, but rather in Mexico. Again, that turned most of them away. And then finally, apply the public health exclusionary order to all migrants, period. Those 3 things combined will immediately send the word back to the home country that the border is not open and that you cannot come. And Joe Biden could do all of those things tomorrow. He doesn't need a single penny. He doesn't need a single law passed from Congress. He can do all of it. That's why this is the Biden border crisis, because he created the conditions for this crisis.
Senator Tom Cotton again is with me, Republican from Arizona. I'm from Arkansas. Sorry about that. At Senator Tom Cotton, at Send Tom Cotton on Twitter. Senator, one more border question before we turn briefly to China. Last one I want to bring up is when we're looking at the Republican response. Rick Scott floated a amnesty for DACA illegal aliens. Lindsey Graham has indicated he's kind of lightly supports it, though he does acknowledge what's happening now at the border is very bad. I don't think this is going to pick up a lot of momentum with Republicans, but I'm just still stunned that this is a priority for anyone. And maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe this is some sort of a trial balloon that I don't quite see. What do you make of this?
So Alex, I think you put your finger on the right word, the priority. At a time when we still have 10 million Americans out of work because of the pandemic China unleashed on the world, and we have a crisis at our border, I don't think giving legal status to persons who came here as minors decades ago should be an urgent priority. Now, when those things are under control, that's a debate we can have. I worked with President Trump 2 or 3 years ago to help craft a bill that would provide legal status to about 1.5 million of those people who came here as minors. But in return, it would have ended chain migration, so they couldn't turn around and legalize their parents who did violate the law. The principle by which people argue that we should give those persons legal status is, well, children shouldn't pay for the crimes of the parents. Okay, I understand that. How about parents paying for the crimes of the parents?
Right.
Ended chain migration, it would have ended the diversity lottery, and it would have provided the money to build the wall. That was a good, reasonable compromise that Democrats filibustered. That was a different time, though, 2 or 3 years ago, when we had a really hot economy and we didn't have a crisis at our border. So I think you put your finger on the right word there, the priority. The priority right now should be getting Americans back to work and getting our border closed.
Yeah, and I'm a zero amnesty guy, but again, if you close the border and you create a merit-based immigration system, then we can talk about anything. But until we have those things, then we're way putting the cart before the horse.
And the fundamental problem, going back 35 years now, the fundamental problem going back to the 86 amnesty law is that the structure of these laws has always been amnesty first, enforcement later, probably never. Because the lesson of 1986's amnesty was the amnesty is immediate, the amnesty is irreversible. You can't take citizenship away once you grant it to someone. However, future Congresses are not invested in enforcement. They deprive it of money. The bureaucracy doesn't like it. They slow roll it. The ACLU and La Raza and the Chamber of Commerce go to the federal courts to block it as well. That's why it has to be enforcement first and Americans first.
Senator, last one for today, and this one's on China. A Gallup poll shows 46% of Americans believe China is our greatest enemy, by far the most of any country. Russia's second at 26%. This seems like a big vindication for folks like you and me who've been kind of banging this drum for a while, as opposed to the MSNBC and CNN crowd who've been saying Russia's the worst. But again, still 46. I wish it was 100. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's a big improvement over the last, say 4 years, when you had the Obama administration in power with Joe Biden coddling China in every way. It should be 100%. There's no question that China is our biggest enemy. Now, of course, we have other adversaries like Russia and like Iran and like North Korea, but only China has the size and the wealth and the resources to challenge the United States as the world's preeminent economic and military power. And that's why we have to keep our focus on China as our main threat to our prosperity, to our security, to our freedom for the years ahead.
Amen, Senator. And as they say in the House of Representatives, a woman.
Well played, Alex.
Thanks. Thank you, Senator. Come back soon. As always, Good to speak to you.